Hi YouTube, welcome to a video in my series of video guides. I'm going to go over the newest piece of Ocean PvE content, the Siren Hollow Maretta. In this video, I will go over the gear requirements, spawn locations, fight mechanics, and the drops you can get from the boss as well. Feel free to use the timestamps below on the timeline if you want to skip around in the video and skip to the parts you are more interested in. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start this off with what my gear was during the test fights that I did. On the screen, I'll bring up the boat gear that I had, which isn't anything too crazy. I didn't even have full blue gear on, and none of the blue gear that I did have was even plus 10, which is max. These fights were also done on a Carrick Valor, which is the Carrick that focuses more on damage and cannon cooldown and stuff. If you have anywhere close to the gear or stat lineup that I showed before, this fight should be fairly trivial for you. And if you happen to not have anything near that, the bare minimum I would suggest if you want to try to fight this boss would be to either have a Caravel or a Galleus with blue gear that has been upgraded fairly close to plus 10. With that out of the way though, we can move on to how do you find this boss, right? So Maretta is a boss type enemy, and as a result, she doesn't spawn in any set location. She instead spawns in random spots around the entirety of the Margoria Ocean. If you are unfamiliar with what that is, it is the portion of the ocean which requires a compass to know your location, similar to the desert. Somewhere on the screen, I'm going to bring up a map of all the known spawns for this boss. The map you're seeing was taken from the Black Desert Billing Discord, whose members have done an excellent job compiling all their data for as many spawns as possible of her. You can also find a link in the description below if you want to join that Discord. They have a lot of super useful stuff on it related to ocean content, not just limited to this boss fight. It is also important to note that only one Maretta exists per server, and she will respawn on that server exactly 1 hour after she is killed. That means if you find and kill her, you might as well swap channels so you can run into another one and not waste your time on that same server. When hunting for her, simply sail in a big loop around the map that I showed that tries to intersect with as many spawns as possible that were marked on that map in hopes of finding her. The more spawns you can run by in the loop you set, the more chance you'll have of running into her. It's just a numbers game and kind of a luck game, unfortunately. When you do happen to finally get close enough to her where she spawns, you will notice the music will change to her theme song. This does unfortunately mean you do need to make sure your in-game music volume is turned up, or finding her becomes significantly more difficult. The song will start playing from an extremely large distance away from her, so it gives a really big hint on if you're approaching the boss. The theme you're listening for in particular sounds like this. It has a lot of strings and violins and stuff, as you can tell. It's very symphonic in nature. But simply sail around trying to find her in the area where you heard the music change, and if the music goes away, it means you have strayed too far from her and you just need to turn around and continue searching the area where the music was present. Once you find her successfully, the fight finally begins, so we can start going over the mechanics and how you fight her now. The fight isn't too heavy on mechanics, but there are still a few key things you should know. Firstly, the fight starts with her mainly charging at you, attempting to get close enough to start attacking. You just gotta kite her and outrun her while volleying cannonballs at her to start to chip her health down. I did notice that with my ship stats, as you'll probably see on screen an example of me doing this, I could literally just sail in a circle around her while just shooting behind me, and she wouldn't really ever be able to get close enough to hit me, and I could continuously hit her. So I don't know if my boat specifically had enough of the turn and speed stat to be able to do this. I don't know if everyone can do this, but it's definitely something worth trying. As you do this though, occasionally a message will show up on your screen which says Hollow Maretta begins to gather powerful energies. At this point, she stops chasing you and will start to charge up a very large telegraphed AoE. When I say telegraphed, it's like any other telegraphed AoE you've seen in BDO with the big red circle. They do vary in size and shape, so they're not all circles. All you need to really know is just don't be in them when they go off, which is pretty standard for this game, right? Don't stand in the red circles and take free damage. But when you continue like that, you will eventually get her down to 50% HP, and she will stop chasing you again, except this time instead of throwing an AoE, she's going to create a big shield around herself, which kind of looks like a sphere of water. When she is in this state, she's completely immune to damage, you can't hurt her, but she also doesn't really do anything to chase you anymore. She will, however, begin to spawn large amounts of Hekaroos to attack you. If you're unfamiliar with what a Hekaroo is, it's just a sea monster. If you've done any kind of boat content, you will probably have seen this already and fought them. You're probably very familiar with them. These Hekaroos charge at you and try to hit your boat with a mid-sized AoE, which is also telegraphed by a red circle as the other AoEs were. There are a very large amount of them as well, so be prepared to have basically an army of ads charging at you during this phase. The ads, however, are extremely squishy, thankfully, and can be taken out with a single volley of your cannons, so they're not too much of a threat as long as you're paying attention. The boss will, as I said, infinitely spawn these Hekaroos as long as her shield holds, so there's no end to them if you don't finish this phase. In order to remove the shield, we have to disrupt it, which is done by sailing your boat close to her. As you can see on screen, when you sail close enough to her, you will see a message pop up that says, "The rough waters disrupt the Siren's blessing." Essentially, the wakes of your ship will disrupt the shield, which makes it vulnerable to damage. So simply sail near her, and when you get close to enough to her and you see that message pop up, you can start shooting your cannons and start to take the shield down. You want to make sure to not stay too close for too long, because those Hekaroos can start to congregate on you, and it might not be possible to stay in a circle around her, so you might have to do joustings back and forth, do straight lines past her, do, passes up on her, throwing cannonballs, all the way until the shield's down. Once her shield goes down, the fight continues as it did before. You just keep hitting her while avoiding the AoEs and kiting her and all that stuff you've been doing up until this point. The main difference in the fight, though, after the shield goes down, is she will gain one new attack. The attack is another telegraphed AoE, so you will know it's happening with some kind of warning at least. This AoE, however, is much larger than the ones she's done previously. You can see an example of this attack on screen. I'm going to pull one up so you can know what to look for, what the attack looks like. She basically just flies in a big loop which intersects the path of your ship, or at least she tries to intersect the path of your ship, and there's a bunch of AoEs that go off along the path. Just avoid it just like anything else. With that, that's essentially the whole fight. You just get to the shield, take the shield down, continue the fight as you did initially, and you'll take her down eventually. Once she's dead, of course, we get to the loot. The loot you gain from her is pretty decent as far as boss loot goes, especially for ocean content, considering how few bosses we actually have that are relevant as ocean content players. As of making this video, I have killed her 3 times, and it took me about 2 hours to find her 3 times. This was also immediately after the patch almost, so amount available to find were kind of low because everyone was kind of hunting her down, so she may be more readily available if you're trying this any decent amount of time after this patch drop. But as you can see, she drops boat crystals, lightstones, silver items, boat materials, enhancement materials too. I don't think I got any of those, unfortunately, but I do know she drops them. And of course, the thing everyone wants, the Siren Song Aura, which is that green orb you see. It's the item you need in order to make the Manos Sailing Log, which is the newly added life skill equipment, which Sailing finally got after forever. Almost all of what she drops, though, doesn't really have much silver value. The boss drops seem to mainly focus on boat related items, which, if you're familiar with ocean progression, is mostly in crow coin value. So while she does occasionally drop some silver items, some trash item you can sell for a chunk of silver, most of what you get is really going to be crow coin value. So if you're considering hunting her for any kind of monetary gain, you're really not gonna get much out of it, so be warned. Yeah, in conclusion, I would say this boss fight is pretty cool. Fight is somewhat interesting without being too overcomplicated or difficult, and the music for it was a big highlight for me as well. I really enjoyed the songs they did. This boss, however, is not something I would really recommend you going out of your way to hunt down unless you need the Manos Sailing Log specifically. If you need the Sailing Log, then it's fine to go and hunt her down specifically and target looking for her. But once you get that out of the way, once you get that Sailing Log, I would recommend you stop hunting her down. What you gain for hunting her is just not worth the time it takes to find a spawn of her, considering there's only one per server, and you can never even know if the server you're on has one that's spawned if someone has already killed it or something. So if anything, I would recommend just kind of passively killing her or passively finding her. Just while I'm out bartering, for example, I just have the in-game music turned on and I'm listening to see if I happen to pass by her while I'm doing my Margoria parters. Or if you're just like sailing out in the ocean for other reasons, maybe you're grinding saltwater crocodiles or the Margoria pirate fleet, any of that stuff. If you happen to come by her on happenstance, then try to get the kill, but I really wouldn't recommend hunting her. It's just not worth your time. It takes too long and for not enough reward. But yeah, that's the video, guys. You should have all the information you need now to find Maretta and take her down. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment down below the video as always. If you enjoyed the guide, please consider subscribing or liking the video at least. It really helps me out. You can also find me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/bluesky900, where I stream 4 days a week. I'm always happy to help anyone out who pops in there. I love helping people, answering questions, and I just like providing an entertaining place for people to hang out. There's some pretty funny stuff that happens sometimes. But thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.